Hi, it's Nicole. Welcome back to Nicole's Year-End Book Awards Part 2. In Part 1, I gave out my awards for Favorite Children's Story, Favorite Short Story, Favorite World Literature, Most Cinematic Books, Favorite Supporting Characters, Best Teacher, and Favorite Audiobooks. My fellow booktubers, I created this tag for my own personal reflection for the coming years, as well as for you. Please make use of it. I'm excited to hear your winners. Again, for each category, I will explain a little bit about the criteria if it's not straightforward, and then I will announce the winner and for some of them, the runners-up. I will give a short summary for each title and then tell you why I love it. So the next award is number 8, Favorite Screen Adaptations. We all know turning a story from page to screen is a risky business. Just look at what happened to Persuasion. But here are my winners. The runner-up is the 2018 Amazon Prime version of Picnic at Hanging Rock, adapted by Beatrix Christian and Alice Addison, featuring Natalie Dormer. Picnic at Hanging Rock is an Australian modern classic. It's a gothic novel about a group of schoolgirls who went for a picnic at Hanging Rock and some of them never came back. What happened to the missing girls and what will happen next? It's largely a faithful adaptation. The biggest shift is the creation of a central point. The novel doesn't have a fixed narrative point of view, which creates a listless, mysterious atmosphere. In contrast, the TV series revolves around a central character, Mrs. Appleyard, the headmistress of the school, and Natalie Dormer did a fantastic job. The TV series fleshes out a substantial backstory of Mrs. Appleyard, which is at most only implied in the novel. However, amazingly, it feels very natural and very convincing, and it doesn't distract from the story at all. It actually adds to the overall story, and the atmosphere is meticulous. The joint winners are the 2020 BBC TV miniseries of A Suitable Boy and the 2011 film adaptation of Coriolanus. The 2020 BBC A Suitable Boy is adapted by Andrew Davies, whom you might not have heard of, but you are likely to know. The 1995 Pride and Prejudice featuring Colin Firth, the 2005 Bleak House featuring Carey Mulligan, and the 2016 War and Peace featuring Lily James. They are all adapted from page to screen by Davies, and he has done many more. It's a faithful adaptation. Obviously, to fit such a large novel, such a long novel into 6 episodes, you have to lose something, but Davies did a great job condensing the sprawling storyline and nothing feels amiss. For example, Davies did a great job clarifying the progress of Lata's 3 love interests. When I read the novel, I didn't approve of her husband choice, but the TV series makes her decision natural and convincing in the end. And by condensing the storyline, Davies also heightens the tension of the climax significantly. The casting is fitting to perfection. I love how the face and figure of Mrs. Rupamela and Lata look just like mother and daughter, and Arun and Varun, they look like they were born brothers, and I love the actor playing Firoz. The show was filmed in India. The costumes, the interior of the houses, the cityscape, the landscape are all fantastic. It's a feast for the eyes. Coriolanus is a 2011 British film adaptation directed, produced, and the title role played by Ralph Fiennes, aka Lord Voldemort. It was adapted by John Logan. It's also an extremely faithful adaptation of Shakespeare's Coriolanus. Briefly, Coriolanus is a tragic war hero turned into an exile. Roman citizens are at the brink of a riot against nobilities, claiming Coriolanus the chief enemy of the people. But a successful battle makes him a war hero. He is voted to be consul, but disasters soon strike. He is exiled. He then joins his former enemy devotes keys to take revenge on his own countrymen. This adaptation is a film set in a modern world. Apart from that, the lines are faithful to Shakespeare's original script. It's an awesome experience hearing Shakespearean English spoken by soldiers with modern weapons and by politicians in black suits, and knowing that the lines have not been changed and they fit the scene like hand in glove. I didn't know you could do that. I love some of the scenes that are made possible only in a film. Some are constructed very cleverly for the lines. For example, debates on TV or news reports read out by a well-known British news presenter. Some scenes are added between the lines or around lines. For example, the soldiers sing and dance in celebration. They shave their head to copy Coriolanus. It shows the popularity of Coriolanus among his new comrades, and it also paves the way to Ophelia's jealousy and Coriolanus' downfall. It's fabulous. Number 9, most comforting. This award is for books you are already very familiar with, but read again and again regardless, just because how comforting they are, especially when you want to curl up and rest your mind a bit. The winner is the one and only Harry Potter series by J.K. Rowling. There have been many joint winners and runners-up, but the Harry Potter books are the only ones that I reread and rewatch again and again for comfort. I love seeing love and friendship struggling and prevailing against darkness and evil. Even at the darkest moment, when hope is most fragile, is not killed. Unfortunately, there are a whole 7 of them. When I get to the Deathly Hallows, I can go back to the Philosopher's Stone again. Number 10, favorite place. I read as well as watched this, but because they are plays and are written to be watched, my judgment is based on the story as well as the performances I watched. The joint winners are Much Ado About Nothing and A Midsummer Night's Dream, both by William Shakespeare. Much Ado About Nothing will always have a special place in my heart. It is the play that convinced me that theatre is magical and Shakespeare is a magician. It's my first love. It's about the naughty matchmaking of one pair of lovers and the tragedy turned comedy of the second pair of lovers. We watched the wonderful 2022 production in the Globe Theatre in London. I loved its thoughtful adaptation, the actors' performances, the interaction between the actors and the audience. It was extremely funny and the atmosphere was festive and electrifying. A Midsummer Night's Dream is my favourite theatre production this year. We watched the National Theatre 2019 production on their online streaming service. The whole theatre space was turned into a dreamland and the atmosphere was that of a carnival. The audience participation was on a whole new level and I really wished I was there. It was ridiculous and cringy a lot of the time, but I couldn't help joining in the silliness because it was so much fun. Again, it just impresses on me that good theatre is magical and romping does much good to one's heart. I watched the same show twice in a month and I'm sure we'll find time to watch it again. This one might become my new comforting show alongside Harry Potter films. Number 11. Favorite non-fiction. The winner is Mad About Shakespeare by Jonathan Bate. It was my favorite book of the year when I made a video all about it in June, and it remains one of my favorites in December. It has received 2 awards in part 1 already, the Best Teacher and the Best Audiobook. Mad About Shakespeare is partly Jonathan Bate's memoir, partly his musings on literature and literary figures throughout history, with an underlining theme of mental health issue. The author makes literature, especially Shakespeare, come to life in this book. He talks about his encounters with various Shakespeare's plays in classrooms, in theatres and in his study. He also introduces many authors like John Donne, Dr. Samuel Johnson, Helen and Edward Thomas, Charles and Mary Lamb, Sylvia Plath and Ted Hughes, Virginia Woolf and many more. extraordinary things have come out of seemingly ordinary stories. The book overflows with passion and knowledge. His is a life saturated with literature. Number 12, favorite protagonist. The winner is Coriolanus from Coriolanus by William Shakespeare. It's a bit of an unusual choice, I know. I'm a bit surprised by it as well. It's not my favorite story, but having looked through all my books, I can't think of another protagonist that I know and feel for more than Coriolanus. I asked my husband to call me his gracious silence like Coriolanus does his wife, but my husband wouldn't. Coriolanus hasn't got a good reputation among the readers or the theatre goers. He's a brute, he's an overgrown child, he has no brain, no tactics, a terrible politician. But I see plainly the bright side of his personality, and I think his character is a lot more complex than that. The dedicated video I made for Coriolanus is also the one I'm most proud of this year, so I will link it just in case you'd like to see my point of view. Number 13, favorite novels. The two runners-up are The Napoleon of Notting Hill by G.K. Chesterton and The Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society by Mary Ann Shaffer and Annie Burroughs. The Napoleon of Notting Hill is one of the most wacky, whimsical novels I read this year. The novel reads like a giant multi-layered allegory and it's thought-provoking. But before you get to all that, it's just Chesterton's imagination running free and wild. The novel was written in 1904 and is set in 80 years' time. England is ruled by kings that are selected randomly. All seems to have gone well until a man who cares for nothing but jokes is selected to be the next king of England. Now he's king, he can humor himself on a national level and make a fool of everybody. He orders city gates and city walls to be built and ancient ceremonies restored in order to revive old English customs and patriotism. No one takes him seriously except one man called Adam Wayne, and together they cause mayhem and turn London upside down. I made a video all about this midsummer madness of a story and Chesterton's thinking behind patriotism and old English customs. I will link it for you as well. I read The Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society in January, and it was my first 5-star books of the year. The story is set straight after the Second World War, and it starts with a writer lives in London called Juliet, and one day out of the blue she receives a letter from a stranger from the Guernsey island. Through letters, Juliet makes a whole host of friends, telling her how the society came into being and their extraordinary life under German occupation during the war. I thought the epistolary structure was going to be gimmicky and cumbersome, but it's actually perfect. I also love the post-war setting where small signs of life pop up like mushrooms all over London and England. I love the retellings of the wartime stories, for example, the heartbreak over the evacuation of the children from Guernsey to England, the isolation and the imprisonment of the islanders as well as the German soldiers, the starvation on both sides, the unlikely friendship between enemies, and the joy even at the darkest time through the power of literature. The winner is A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. Despite the ending of the novel being spoiled years ago, I was completely blown away by the story. It makes me cry and laugh, and it makes me think and feel for the characters. Dickens is such a master storyteller. He gets the balance between hardship and happiness, between the society on a larger scale and individual human life, between tragedy and humor, and between the shocking violence and the tender love, and between the force of the revolution and the power of sacrifice. Just right. It's extremely gripping and moving. Dickens also gets his point across forcefully. Hatred and violence are not the way forward. I made a video about his attitudes towards the French Revolution. I will link it as well. Number 14, favorite author. The winner is G.K. Chesterton. Chesterton is a new author to me this year. I read a novel, a short story, and a few essays by him, and so far 3 different styles. I have loved all of them. I mentioned the short story, The Awful Reason of the Vicar's Visit, in part 1. That one is one of my favorite short stories this year. It has a Conan Doyle vibe to it. The few essays from the collection, The Defendant, remind me strongly of C.S. Lewis. They both see wonder in ordinary things from unusual point of view. And his novel, The Napoleon of Notting Hill, is one of my favorite novels this year. It's a shame few people read and talk about it. Lastly, number 15, books of the year. Finally, taking everything into consideration, my favorite books of 2022 are Mad About Shakespeare by Jonathan Bate and A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. A Tale of Two Cities has all the genius of Dickens I expected and much more that I didn't expect. It's one of the most powerful stories in literature. I genuinely believe the world would be a better place if everyone read it with an open mind. Mad About Shakespeare speaks to my heart that literature is worth one's lifelong commitment and dedication for the courage and joy it offers. That's the end of Nicole's Year-End Book Awards ceremony. If you'd like to know my favorites from last year, you can see it in this video. But what are your favorites? Do leave me a comment. And Happy New Year, everyone! That's all for today. Thank you for watching. I will see you in my next one.